1 Samuel chapter 5. The Philistines took the sacred chest from near Ebenezer to the town of Ashdod. They brought it into the temple of their god Dagon and put it next to the statue of Dagon which they worshipped. When the people of Ashdod got up early the next morning, they found the statue lying face down on the floor in front of the sacred chest. They put the statue back where it belonged, but early the next morning it had fallen over again and was lying face down on the floor in front of the chest. The body of the statue was still in one piece, but its head and both hands had broken off and were lying on the stone floor of the doorway. This is the reason the priests and everyone else step over that part of the doorway when they enter the temple of Dagon in Ashdod. The Lord caused a lot of trouble for the people of Ashdod and their neighbors. He made sores break out all over their bodies, and everyone was in a panic. Finally they said,
"The God of Israel did this. He's the one who caused all this trouble for us and our god Dagon. We've got to get rid of this chest."
The people of Ashdod had all the Philistine rulers come to Ashdod, and they asked them,
"What can we do with the sacred chest that belongs to the God of Israel?"
"Send it to Gath,"
the rulers answered. But after they took it there, the Lord made sores break out on everyone in town. The people of Gath were frightened, so they sent the sacred chest to Ekron. But before they could take it through the town gates, the people of Ekron started screaming,
"They've brought the sacred chest that belongs to the God of Israel! It will kill us and our families too!"
The people of Ekron called for another meeting of the Philistine rulers and told them,
"Send this chest back where it belongs, then it won't kill us."
Everyone was in a panic because God was causing a lot of people to die, and those who had survived were suffering from the sores. They all cried to their gods for help. 1 Samuel chapter 6. After the sacred chest had been in Philistia for 7 months, the Philistines called in their priests and fortune tellers and asked,
"What should we do with this sacred chest? Tell us how to send it back where it belongs."
"Don't send it back without a gift,"
the priests and fortune tellers answered.
"Send along something to Israel's God to make up for taking the chest in the first place. Then you will be healed, and you will find out why the Lord was causing you so much trouble."
"What should we send?"
the Philistines asked. The priests and fortune tellers answered,
"There are 5 Philistine rulers, and they all have the same disease that you have. So make 5 gold models of the swords and 5 gold models of the rats that are wiping out your crops. If you honor the God of Israel with this gift, maybe he will stop causing trouble for you and your gods and your crops. Don't be like the Egyptians and their king. They were stubborn, but when Israel's God was finished with them, they had to let Israel go. Get a new cart and 2 cows that have young calves and that have never pulled a cart. Hitch the cows to the cart, but take the calves back to their barn. Then put the chest on the cart. Put the gold rats and sores into a bag and put it on the cart next to the chest. Then send it on its way.
Watch to see if the chest goes on up the road to the Israelite town of Beth-Shemesh. If it goes back to its own country, you will know that it was the Lord who made us suffer so badly. But if the chest doesn't go back to its own country, then the Lord had nothing to do with the disease that hit us. It was simply bad luck."
The Philistines followed their advice. They hitched up the 2 cows to the cart, but they kept their calves in a barn. Then they put the chest on the cart, along with the bag that had the gold rats and sores in it. The cows went straight up the road toward Beth-Shemesh, mooing as they went. The Philistine rulers followed them until they got close to Beth-Shemesh. The people of Beth-Shemesh were harvesting their wheat in the valley. When they looked up and saw the chest, they were so happy that they stopped working and started celebrating. The cows left the road and pulled the cart into a field that belonged to Joshua from Beth-Shemesh, and they stopped beside a huge rock. Some men from the tribe of Levi were there. So they took the chest off the cart and placed it on the rock, and then they did the same thing with the bag of gold rats and sores. A few other people chopped up the cart and made a fire. They killed the cows and burned them as sacrifices to the Lord. After that, they offered more sacrifices. When the 5 rulers of the Philistines saw what had happened, they went back to Ekron that same day. That is how the Philistines sent gifts to the Lord to make up for taking the sacred chest. They sent 5 gold swords, one each for their towns of Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. They also sent 1 gold rat for each walled town and for every village that the 5 Philistine rulers controlled. The huge stone where the Levites set the chest is still there in Joshua's field as a reminder of what happened. Some of the men of Beth-Shemesh looked inside the sacred chest, and the Lord God killed 70 of them. This made the people of Beth-Shemesh very sad, and they started saying,
"No other God is like the Lord. Who can go near him and still live? We'll have to send the chest away from here, but where can we send it?"
They sent messengers to tell the people of Kiriath-Jearim,
The Philistines have sent back the sacred chest. Why don't you take it and keep it there with you?
1 Samuel chapter 7. The people of Kiriath-Jearim got the chest and took it to Abinadab's house, which was on a hill in their town. They chose his son Eleazar to take care of it, and it stayed there for 20 years. During this time, everyone in Israel was very sad and begged the Lord for help. One day, Samuel told all the people of Israel,
If you really want to turn back to the Lord, then prove it. Get rid of your foreign idols, including the ones of the goddess Astarte. Turn to the Lord with all your heart and worship only him. Then he will rescue you from the Philistines.
The people got rid of their idols of Baal and Astarte and began worshiping only the Lord. Then Samuel said,
Tell everyone in Israel to meet together at Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you.
The Israelites met together at Mizpah with Samuel as their leader. They drew water from the well and poured it out as an offering to the Lord. On that same day, they went without eating to show their sorrow, and they confessed they had been unfaithful to the Lord. When the Philistine rulers found out about the meeting at Mizpah, they sent an army there to attack the people of Israel. The Israelites were afraid when they heard that the Philistines were coming.
Don't stop praying.
They told Samuel.
Ask the Lord our God to rescue us.
Samuel begged the Lord to rescue Israel. Then he sacrificed a young lamb to the Lord. Samuel had not even finished offering the sacrifice when the Philistines started to attack. But the Lord answered his prayer and made thunder crash all around them. The Philistines panicked and ran away. The men of Israel left Mizpah and went after them as far as the hillside below Beth-Kar, killing every enemy soldier they caught. The Philistines were so badly beaten that it was quite a while before they attacked Israel again. After the battle, Samuel set up a monument between Mizpah and the rocky cliffs. He named it Help Monument, to remind Israel how much the Lord had helped them. For as long as Samuel lived, the Lord helped Israel fight the Philistines. The Israelites were even able to recapture their towns and territory between Ekron and Gath. Israel was also at peace with the Amorites. Samuel was a leader in Israel all his life. Every year he would go around to the towns of Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah, where he served as judge for the people. Then he would go back to his home in Ramah and do the same thing there. He also had an altar built for the Lord at Ramah. 1 Samuel chapter 8. Samuel had 2 sons. The older one was Joel, and the younger one was Abijah. When Samuel was getting old, he let them be leaders at Beersheba. But they were not like their father. They were dishonest and accepted bribes to give unfair decisions. One day the nation's leaders came to Samuel at Ramah and said,
You're an old man. You set a good example for your sons, but they haven't followed it. Now we want a king to be our leader, just like all the other nations. Choose one for us.
Samuel was upset to hear the leaders say they wanted a king, so he prayed about it. The Lord answered,
Samuel, do everything they want you to do. I am really the one they have rejected as their king. Ever since the day I rescued my people from Egypt, they have turned from me to worship idols. Now they are turning away from you. Do everything they ask, but warn them and tell them how a king will treat them.
Samuel told the people who were asking for a king what the Lord had said.
If you have a king, this is how he will treat you. He will force your sons to join his army. Some of them will ride in his chariots, some will serve in the cavalry, and others will run ahead of his own chariot. Some of them will be officers in charge of 1,000 soldiers, and others will be in charge of 50. Still others will have to farm the king's land and harvest his crops, or make weapons and parts for his chariots. Your daughters will have to make perfume or do his cooking and baking. The king will take your best fields, as well as your vineyards and olive orchards, and give them to his own officials. He will also take 1/10 of your grain and grapes and give it to his officers and officials. The king will take your slaves and your best young men and your donkeys and make them do his work. He will also take 1/10 of your sheep and goats. You will become the king's slaves, and you will finally cry out for the Lord to save you from the king you wanted, but the Lord won't answer your prayers.
The people would not listen to Samuel.
No!
They said,
We want to be like other nations. We want a king to rule us and lead us in battle.
Samuel listened to them and then told the Lord exactly what they had said.
Do what they want,
the Lord answered.
Give them a king.
Samuel told the people to go back to their homes. 1 Samuel, chapter 9. Kish was a wealthy man who belonged to the tribe of Benjamin. His father was Abiel. His grandfather was Zeror. His great-grandfather was Bichereth. And his great-great-grandfather was Aphiah. Kish had a son named Saul, who was better looking and more than a head taller than anyone else in all Israel. Kish owned some donkeys, but they had run off, so he told Saul,
Take one of the servants, and go, look for the donkeys.
Saul and the servant went through the hill country of Ephraim and the territory of Shalisha, but they could not find the donkeys. Then they went through the territories of Shaalim and Benjamin, but still there was no sign of the donkeys. Finally, they came to the territory where the clan of Zuph lived.
Let's go back home,
Saul told his servant.
If we don't go back soon, my father will stop worrying about the donkeys and start worrying about us.
Wait,
the servant answered.
There's a man of God who lives in a town near here. He's amazing. Everything he says comes true. Let's talk to him. Maybe he can tell us where to look.
Saul said,
How can we talk to the prophet when I don't have anything to give him? We don't even have any bread left in our sacks. What can we give him?
I have a small piece of silver,
the servant answered.
We can give him that, and then he will tell us where to look for the donkeys.
Great,
Saul replied.
Let's go to the man who can see visions.
He said this because in those days God would answer questions by giving visions to prophets. Saul and his servant went to the town where the prophet lived. As they were going up the hill to the town, they met some young women coming out to get water, and the two men said to them,
We're looking for the man who can see visions. Is he in town?
Yes, he is,
they replied.
He's in town today because there's going to be a sacrifice and a sacred meal at the place of worship. In fact, he's just ahead of you. Hurry! And you should find him right inside the town gate. He's on his way out to the place of worship to eat with the invited guests. They can't start eating until he blesses the sacrifice. If you go now, you should find him.
They went to the town, and just as they were going through the gate, Samuel was coming out on his way to the place of worship. The day before Saul came, the Lord had told Samuel,
I've seen how my people are suffering, and I've heard their call for help. About this time tomorrow, I'll send you a man from the tribe of Benjamin who will rescue my people from the Philistines. I want you to pour olive oil on his head to show that he will be their leader.
Samuel looked at Saul, and the Lord told Samuel,
This is the man I told you about. He is the one who will rule Israel.
Saul went over to Samuel in the gateway and said,
A man who can see visions lives here in town. Could you tell me the way to his house?
I am the one who sees visions,
Samuel answered.
Go on up to the place of worship. You will eat with me today, and in the morning I'll answer your questions. Don't worry about your donkeys that ran off 3 days ago. They've already been found. Everything of value in Israel now belongs to you and your family.
Why are you telling me this?
Saul asked.
I'm from Benjamin, the smallest tribe in Israel, and my clan is the least important in the tribe.
Samuel took Saul and his servant into the dining room at the place of worship. About 30 people were there for the dinner, but Samuel gave Saul and his servant the places of honor. Then Samuel told the cook,
I gave you the best piece of meat and told you to set it aside. Bring it here now.
The cook brought the meat over and set it down in front of Saul.
This is for you,
Samuel told him.
Go ahead and eat it. I had this piece saved especially for you, and I invited these guests to eat with you.
After Saul and Samuel had finished eating, they went down from the place of worship and back into town. A bed was set up for Saul on the flat roof of Samuel's house, and Saul slept there. About sunrise the next morning, Samuel called up to Saul on the roof.
Time to get up. I'll help you get started on your way.
Saul got up. He and Samuel left together and had almost reached the edge of town when Samuel stopped and said,
Have your servant go on. Stay here with me for a few minutes, and I'll tell you what God has told me.